Today I'll destroy my own relationship by checking my partner's phone. Nobody wakes up one morning and suddenly decides that. Emily certainly didn't. She didn't become crazy overnight. That's the part people never understand. It happened slowly, quietly. One disappointment, one betrayal, one unanswered message, one lie from somebody years ago that never fully left your nervous system. And eventually your brain stops asking, "Am I safe?" It starts asking, "What am I missing?" Emily was 28, smart, independent, attractive. The kind of woman people described as emotionally mature. But emotionally mature people can still carry emotional wounds, especially hidden ones. And Daniel honestly wasn't helping. Not because he was cheating, because he was changing. And people underestimate how terrifying change feels inside a relationship. At first it was small things. He became quieter after work, started taking his phone into the bathroom sometimes, not every time, sometimes, which was somehow worse, because inconsistency creates obsession. If somebody hides everything, you eventually accept it. But if somebody acts normal 90% of the time and strange 10% of the time, your brain begins connecting dots that may not even exist. One Friday evening, they were having dinner together when his phone lit up. A woman's name, Sophie. Daniel glanced at the message, smiled slightly, locked the screen. Emily felt it immediately. That tiny stab in the stomach. Not proof, not certainty, just emotional danger. "What's funny?" she asked casually. "Nothing. Work stuff." And that answer should have ended the moment. But anxiety doesn't end with answers. It feeds on them, especially vague ones. That night, Emily barely slept. Her mind replayed the smile over and over. Why did he smile like that? Why lock the phone so quickly? Why not just show the message? Why suddenly work stuff? By morning, she had already created 20 imaginary scenarios. And that's what anxiety does. It turns imagination into memory before reality even happens. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Daniel wasn't colder, but he seemed elsewhere, sometimes emotionally distant, sometimes deeply affectionate. Again, inconsistency. The most addictive thing on earth, because certainty calms the nervous system, but unpredictability hijacks it. Emily started noticing everything. The angle of his phone screen, how fast he replied sometimes, how long he stayed online, how quickly he turned his phone face down during conversations. None of it proved anything, but together it created a psychological movie inside her head, one where she was about to be abandoned, again. And the terrifying part? People don't react emotionally to reality. They react emotionally to the story they believe reality is becoming. One evening, her friend Ava made everything worse. They were drinking wine in Emily's apartment while Daniel worked late. "You know," Ava said casually, "every guy I've dated who cheated started acting nicer before I found out." Emily froze. Nicer? Yeah, less arguments, more calm. It's guilt. That sentence entered her nervous system like poison, because suddenly Daniel's calmness stopped feeling reassuring. Now it looked suspicious. And once suspicion enters a relationship, almost everything becomes evidence. A delayed text, evidence. A tired expression, evidence. Less intimacy, evidence. More intimacy, also evidence. That's the insanity of insecurity. It creates a system where every outcome confirms the fear. A week later, Emily was lying beside Daniel in bed while he slept. 1:14 a.m. Rain outside, his breathing slow and steady, and his phone was right there on the nightstand. For almost 20 minutes, she fought herself mentally. "Don't do this. This is toxic. If you check once, you'll check again. Trust him. You're projecting." But another voice kept whispering louder. "If there's nothing to hide, why are you scared to look?" That sentence destroys more relationships than cheating itself, because it sounds logical. But it's actually emotional manipulation people use against themselves. At 1:37 a.m., she picked up the phone. Her hands were trembling, not because she was evil, because part of her knew, once you cross this line, something changes forever. She guessed the password immediately. That hurt too, because knowing someone that intimately while still doubting them creates emotional shame. She opened Instagram first. Nothing. Messages, nothing. Photos, nothing. Then work chats. Sophie. Emily's chest tightened immediately. She opened the conversation, long discussions, deadlines, project screenshots. Then, "Thanks for staying late tonight." Another message, "You always save this team." A laughing emoji. One blurry selfie from the office with several coworkers in the background. That was it. No sexting. No hotel rooms. No hidden romance. But by that point, Emily's body was already in panic mode. And once adrenaline enters the nervous system, people stop interpreting reality objectively. She woke Daniel up instantly. "Who the hell is Sophie?" Daniel looked disoriented. "What? Sophie." He sat up slowly, and the moment he realized she had gone through his phone, his entire expression changed. Not guilt, not panic, disappointment, real disappointment, and strangely, that made Emily even angrier. Because guilty people are easier to fight. Calm people force you to face yourself. The next 2 hours felt like psychological warfare. Emily questioned everything. Why didn't you mention her? Why does she text you late? Why were you smiling? Why did she send emojis? Why didn't you tell me you stayed late? Daniel answered every question, patiently, too patiently, which somehow made Emily feel even more irrational. And deep down, she hated that feeling. Not because she wanted him guilty, because if he wasn't guilty, then her fear suddenly became the problem. Around 4 a.m., Daniel finally said quietly, "You already decided who I was before opening my phone." Silence. You weren't searching for truth. You were searching for confirmation. That sentence stayed in the room like smoke. For the next week, their relationship changed completely. Not dramatically, subtly, and subtle damage is the most dangerous kind. Daniel became careful, not secretive. Careful. He stopped leaving his phone around casually, stopped joking naturally, stopped feeling emotionally relaxed. Because once someone searches your private world, your nervous system no longer feels safe around them, even if they apologize. One evening, Emily noticed him deleting notifications quickly. Her stomach dropped instantly. "There, see? Now you are hiding things." Daniel stared at her for a few seconds before answering. "No. Now I'm protecting myself from being psychologically inspected every day." That sentence shattered her, because part of her understood exactly what he meant. The relationship was no longer built on connection. It had become surveillance, and surveillance changes human behavior. Even innocent people become guarded when constantly monitored. A few nights later, Daniel finally admitted something brutal. "I don't think I can relax around you anymore." Emily cried immediately. "But you're acting like I committed some horrible crime." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You didn't destroy this relationship by checking my phone. You destroyed it because you stopped seeing me as your partner. You started seeing me as a potential threat." Silence again. Then he said something she would replay in her mind for months after he left. "You know what hurts most? You looked at me sleeping next to you, and still believed I might secretly be betraying you." A week later, he packed his things. No screaming, no revenge, no dramatic final fight, just emotional exhaustion. At the door, Emily asked the question people always ask when relationships collapse quietly. "So, that's it? You're really leaving?" Daniel looked at her sadly. "I'm not leaving because you checked my phone. I'm leaving because I realized I could spend years trying to prove my innocence to somebody who already expects betrayal." Then he walked out. And here's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes hearing. Sometimes relationships don't die from cheating. They die from fear of cheating, from suspicion, from emotional monitoring, from turning intimacy into investigation. Because love cannot survive long term, where one person constantly feels evaluated, tested, and psychologically scanned. Eventually, even loyal people stop feeling loved. They start feeling trapped. Now, obviously, some people do cheat. Some instincts are correct. Some suspicions save people from betrayal. But there's another reality modern relationships rarely discuss. Hypervigilance destroys intimacy too. Because if somebody has to continuously prove they're safe, pure, loyal, innocent, trustworthy, the relationship slowly stops feeling like love and starts feeling like probation. The scariest part? Emily still doesn't fully know whether she was wrong. Part of her still thinks, if he truly loved me, he would have understood my fears. But another part finally understands something painful. Fear explains behavior. It doesn't justify destroying trust. And sometimes unresolved trauma quietly transforms good people into prison guards inside their own relationships. Not because they want control, because they're terrified of pain repeating itself. So, before you ever check somebody's phone, ask yourself one brutal question. If I find nothing, will I finally trust them? Or will my fear simply search for a new reason tomorrow? Because if fear is driving the relationship, no amount of evidence will ever feel like enough. And eventually the person beside you stops fighting to be trusted. They simply get tired and leave.